All right. Hey, welcome to Dads with Coffee. As you can see, Keith is not here today. He's out serving in the high school today. So I have with me one of my great friends, longtime friends, Brett Morani. He and I were in college together. We roomed together in seminary. He was in my wedding. I couldn't make his, but he was in mine. So we've just been friends for a long time. Brett is the pastor at Harvest Church in Jacksonville, Florida. He has a podcast, Sound of Truth. So you can find that on Spotify and you can listen in on that. And also at pastorbrett.com, you can find out more things about Brett than you know now. And you can find out more there. But you'll find out all the juicy stuff here. So thank you all for joining me today. Hey, Brett, great to have you on Dads with Coffee.
Thank you. And I forgot it was Dads with Coffee. I've got a root beer here.
That's okay. He has sweet tea about half the time. So
okay.
Yeah. So, I'm a coffee drinker 12 months a year. And I know, and he's not. It has to be a certain temperature before coffee enters the building. But I don't know about you, but I'm a coffee drinker all the time.
Hey, I live in Florida, so I'm fine with coffee year round. In fact, I usually have a cup in the morning. Hey, by the way, we do have Whataburger in Jacksonville.
Oh, so you listened to a prior podcast? No,
I didn't. I'm just letting you know that we have Whataburger in Jacksonville because that was only a Texas thing when you and I went to Texas.
Exactly.
And one of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think from Texas, decided to bring Whataburger when he retired from the Jaguars. He decided he wanted to bring Whataburger to Jacksonville. So it was a business venture that they
it's an Illinois company that owns it now. It's not a business company anymore. 2 years ago, Chicago, Illinois company bought them out.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. So we just don't have one close to where we live on our side of the city, a Whataburger. It's kind of a ways away. But I think they've got a handful, maybe 5 or 6 in the Jacksonville area, or 4. I don't know. But my question with the coffee thing was, when I was in seminary, I had this plastic coffee mug from Whataburger, and it was a nickel that you would go into refills for a nickel. Do they do that still?
I don't think it's a nickel.
Yeah.
But if you pulled that puppy out, they probably have to honor it.
I think I read a couple of years ago on the internet, they do honor if they don't sell those mugs anymore, but if you've got an old one.
If you still have it,
yeah,
it hasn't melted in the dishwasher yet, then you can still bring it.
I wish I'd have kept mine since we have one, just to go in, just to see what they'd say when they
see if they'll do it.
But,
hey, a question because I'm curious, and I think others may be too, especially if they look on the website. It's Harvest Bible Church.
No, actually, it's Harvest Jacksonville.
Bible Church.
A Bible Church. That's right.
What do you mean by that? Help me understand. What do you mean by that? Because we know each other, but help me understand what you mean by that.
So here's what happened. We were part of a network of churches called the Harvest Bible Fellowship, which was an international network of churches that non-denominational, although we were also affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention. We had dual affiliation. And for several years, we gave 5% to the cooperative program and 5% to the HBF, Harvest Bible Fellowship.
Right.
In 2018, the Harvest Bible Fellowship, 2017, the Harvest Bible Fellowship dissolved and existed no more. There was our founder, you can find him on the internet, he got in some trouble and
he got in some issues.
Yeah, and so it was. We had been concerned about that for several years.
Yeah.
But the healthy thing and good thing was it ended up being dissolved. We formed a new network without him called the Great Commission Collective.
Okay.
The following 6 months later, after the dissolution of the Harvest Bible Fellowship, which he's the one who dissolved it. Our founder did.
Right.
He was kind of angry, and so anyway, not going to get into all that, but
nope.
Wanting to all the churches in the network initially had the same name as the church in Chicago, which was Harvest Bible Chapel. So we were Harvest Bible Chapel of Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
And once we dissolved and kind of wanting to just separate ourselves a little bit in name, We always just call ourselves Harvest Jacksonville. In fact, a lot of the churches throughout our network would like Harvest Orlando,
Right.
Harvest Raleigh. That's kind of how we, instead of saying Harvest Bible Chapel and then the name of your city, you just kind of shortened it the way people do that. It's kind of natural.
Yeah.
And we just went by Harvest Jacksonville all the time. Our website, and most of the churches in our network would have a website like ours, which would be harvestjacksonville.org, or name your city. If you could get the harvest in the city name.org, you'd get it. So since we already kind of call ourselves that all the time, instead of doing a major name change, which a lot of our churches did, a lot of them went like Redemption Bible Church or whatever, we said, let's just take the Bible Chapel out and just go with what we call ourselves, Harvest Jacksonville. So the name of our church is Harvest Jacksonville. And then kind of the subtitle is a Bible church to kind of qualify what we are. We are a Baptist church. We're Southern Baptist Church affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention, as I mentioned. But our primary identity is that we are a church based upon the Word of God.
Right. Because there is a quasi-denomination out there of Bible churches that have their own, theology and stuff, and just, didn't know if it leaned that way or if it was just you wanted to focus on the fact that you're based on the Word of God. That's
what we want to focus on. And here it's not so much as a thing as in, say, Texas, where a lot of churches that are non-denominational, but they have DTS graduates. They're calling themselves Bible churches.
Right.
That's not really us, although we don't have a problem with who they are and what they are.
Sure.
But we are denominational. We're Southern Baptist, but we wanted people to know we're based on the Bible. And really, here's the thing. We're not trying to reach people who understand these different tribal labels anyway.
Right.
We're trying to reach lost people.
Exactly.
We want to reach the unchurched who they don't know a Baptist church from a Bible church.
Right.
Although we want them to know when they come into our door, they're going to hear the Bible taught.
Right.
And we're going to give them a Bible if they don't have a Bible. We gave a Bible away this past Sunday to a guest.
Sure.
And so, so we're based on the Bible. We choose to be Baptist. We choose to be Great Commission Collective as well.
Yeah. So how long have you been there?
21 years.
I was going to say, it was right around 99, 2000 when you planted that church.
We moved here in the summer of 2000. We didn't know anybody. In church planting world, it's called a parachute plant. You parachute into the city not knowing anybody. Also known as a cold start.
Right.
Like a hot start would be a church is splitting over something. So let's just be amicable about this. You guys go start your own church.
Well, we got to make it sound good.
Yeah, that would be a hot start. You've got 100 people already.
Baptist church planting.
Yeah, cold start is me and my wife, no kids yet, nothing, don't know anybody. Let's start a church. Move in here, no background here, nothing. So looking back on it, it was a pretty big step of faith at the time, or a step of craziness. I don't know what, but we're honored. We have a church now, so.
So when because I'm preparing to have conversations like this with my own people, is 20 years now. It's easy to move into what I will call established church mentality versus church plant mentality.
Your church is 20 years old?
No, but yours is. So my question is, how have you struggled with the movement, even unintentionally, toward established church, or how have you kept it with what I'm calling a church plant mentality, where you keep that missional viewpoint of your city versus easily transitioning into programmatic and, okay, we're here. And then, I mean, I think you've probably kept it as a church plant mentality. How have you done that when it's easy to fall into the established church route?
That's a great question. And I would say, I'm not so sure we've done a great job of.
Okay.
It's so hard to keep that mindset. Church planting is successful in terms of getting off the ground and reaching people because you're desperate.
Right.
You don't have anybody. So you've got to reach out. You're forced into, unless you're one of these church plants that, like I mentioned,
a hot start.
You've got maybe 3 staff members and a $250,000 budget out of the gate, and you've got a building maybe was given to you.
That's almost unfair.
a large sending church that gives you 250 people, in that case, you're fighting that battle right out of the gates of how do we get these people to think outward.
Yes.
When you do what we did, you have no choice but to think outward, or you don't have a church.
Right. So was there a time 7, 10, 12 years in, or 2 or 3 maybe, where
I mean, as soon as yes. I would say in year 1, there was a time we had to start fighting that battle.
Wow.
Because what you have is, once you get a group of people that are there, for us, it was a core group of 12 people to launch the church. We launched the church, that doubled our size to 25 to 35 people on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of the first year, we were at 75 people. And by that point, in fact, but here's the crazy thing. You've got psychological barriers at every size breakthrough. And they've been identified pretty clearly by church growth experts and all that.
100, 200, or 250.
Well, 35, 75, 125, and then 200. Those are the numbers. And when I say 125 to 200, 125 to 135 is the number. And then you've got to next break through the 200 barrier, which is very, very, very hard for churches to break.
It is.
For very, very clear reasons. It's a psychological, it's a major psychological barrier, not just for the people, but for the staff as well, the pastor as well. He has to move from,
family style,
right?
And I was going to ask, do you think that that's largely due to, forgive the terminology, but moving from a family style to more of a corporate style of situation? You get above 200 people. It's you have to be able to. Bill Haynard in his church in his book Reclaim talks about how if we don't figure out how to disseminate all of the work to other people like Acts 6 did, then you're just going to revert back down to 100 people, because you have to learn, you have to delegate out, and the people then have to accept that responsibility.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's organizational changes that have to take place. The whole organization has to change.
And it's the mentality.
It's the mentality, and people don't like change.
Right.
So when we
I'm 50, I'm 51. I've stopped liking change a little. So
right, every barrier you break through to get to the next level, because you make the appropriate changes, you make appropriate leadership changes, your people adjust the mindset. You lose people, because they don't like it anymore. It's different. We lost people when we went from 35 to 75. We lost people when we went from 75 to 125/35. We lost people when we were on the edge of breaking through the 200 barrier. Now, we never broke the 200 barrier. I mean, we broke it a couple times in attendance, but we never officially. We never officially got to where we were running that consistently, and I had to wrestle through that. And I had to accept that at some point in our church planting journey, that, it's okay to have a church that's not running 500 people. There's not, that didn't break the barrier.
What?
So,
I mean,
right.
That's what we were taught. Grow forever.
What's that?
Grow forever, or you're a failure. That's what we were taught. I mean,
well, and the whole culture in Southern Baptist life, at least, is that's what you exist to do, is get the church larger. And
which I think is a problem.
It's a huge problem. And in the past 13 or so years, the Lord really helped me in my late 30s to kind of shed that mindset and embrace His kingdom is more important than the size of my church.
Right.
And my obedience is more important than the numerical success of this church.
And that's not to say a church won't grow. It's just that you're leaving it up to God now, and less man-made situations, and more, let me just get my people to Jesus, and let's all start to learn how to follow the Spirit regularly, daily, and then we'll leave it to God to see what He wants to do with that.
Well, and we have to redefine what real growth is, and separate it from just strictly being how many people show up to an event on Sunday for an hour to an hour and a half.
Right.
So I've been really helped the last few years by some writers who have helped my thinking on that, in terms, and I've been going through just a pretty significant deconstruction of my ecclesiology, maybe. There's a lot of people that are deconstructing their faith. We have friends from college, maybe you've seen on Facebook, that are posting how their faith's been deconstructed and they don't believe what they used to believe and all that. I don't have that problem at all, and I'm thankful for that.
Right.
My faith is as strong as, I guess, as ever and tested. But I am, and I was questioning it, and it all goes back to what I expressed earlier in regard to the dissolution of our fellowship. We were part of a network of churches that was significantly successful in church planting and in numbers. And so the number of church plants that were succeeding, that we were as we were expanding our network, the Harvest Bible Fellowship, of course, we were led by an uber talented and gifted pastor who had a national platform. And when we went into the movement in 2004, we had planted our church as Point of Grace Church. And then in 2004, we affiliated with Chicago. In 2007/8, we went through a major transition to change our name and take on the identity of a partner church instead of just an affiliate church. So we really locked in and joined with the Harvest Bible Fellowship movement. And when we did that, I would say Harvest Chicago, they may have been running. What were they running then? Well, when we first came into the movement, they were running maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people, something like that, in Chicago. This mega church that had this new network of churches that they're planting, and we wanted to team up with them and all that. But at their peak, before it all fell apart, they were running 13,000 people on a Sunday morning. James had a very successful national radio program. I'm sure he was in your area. I remember him coming to Dallas as part of his tour, and he had and then he went on TBN and had a national television ministry going, and it was off to a nice hot start. But then it all fell apart. And so, not to get in the details of all that, but what it did for me was it got me thinking. Because part of the reason why it fell apart was there was just too much emphasis on an unbiblical definition of success and what that looked like, and results, push. And I don't know if you're familiar with the podcast that's really popular right now among pastors to listen to, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill.
I've been listening to it. Yes, I'm caught up. I'm waiting for the next episode.
Okay, so I'm only like 2 episodes in. I feel like I got to take a shower after I get done listening to that thing.
Those are the easy ones. Just wait.
Oh, have you got to the one about James?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I haven't got there yet, so I'm looking forward to hearing that. I experienced it all firsthand. I was there. I was behind the scenes. I saw behind the curtain long before all this came down, which created tension for me because there was things that I saw that really bothered me.
Sure.
And I wasn't on staff up there. I was one of the pastors,
You're just keeping your head down doing your work in Jacksonville.
Well, and honestly, we became a partner church in 2008. By 2012, I had seen enough.
You were done.
Significantly bothered by what I had seen. And yet, at the time, I really believed in what we were doing.
Sure.
I loved the other pastors in our network, still do. A lot of them are with us now with Great Commission Collective. Godly men of integrity, honorable men, things that you don't feel strange about the way these guys are.
Right.
But our leader, on the other hand, we were really wrestling through and struggling with it. So from 2012 to 2017, I lived with the constant tension of, I love this movement, I love these churches, I love the DNA, and I love the other pastors in the network. But our leader, I'm having a hard time trusting him or respecting him, following him. And so it was actually relief in 2017 when it dissolved. It's kind of like, okay, we don't have to worry about that. We can just be who we are.
That's right.
But a couple of years prior to that, our leader had told us he was kind of raging, if you will. I don't want to say raging, but he was talking bad about another pastor who has a very significant national platform that had left his mega church. He had started and instead moved to China and was studying the house church movement, and then had come back to California to start house churches. And our leader of our movement was like, what an idiot, and was expressing to us,
wow,
how crazy that was, and how
God wanted it. If God wanted him to do that, then let's,
why would you leave a church that God had raised up so successful? Blah blah blah. I mean, he had no place in his mind for that. Well,
if you've listened to the interviews with Francis Chan, he wrestled with that too.
Right, and that's who I'm talking about. Of course,
I know. Yeah.
So I have a couple of friends in the movement that went to seminary with Francis Chan.
Yeah.
And knew him personally, and I've got a friend here in Jacksonville that knows him personally. And all I've heard about Francis Chan has been nothing but good. That he's genuinely a good guy, and that he's the real deal, and he's humble. Struggles with pride, of course, because of his sexism, but really has stayed grounded through it all, which was not exactly, shall I say, what I'd seen with our leader as he grew in fame and influence. And so he became a celebrity, national celebrity pastor, if you will. And I know enough from other people, from just friends and stuff, that it's not uncommon for some of the celebrity pastors to live not so respectable lives. And so all that to say, I became curious. I'm like, if you think that this guy's an idiot, Francis Chan, and I've heard nothing but good about the guy, that he's an honorable stand-up guy.
Right.
And if you think what he's doing is crazy, I'm kind of intrigued and want to know what he's doing.
Sure.
So when Francis came out with his book, Letters to the Church, I'm like, I got to read this, because from what I understood, he dealt with why he did what he did, why he walked away from his successful megachurch. Why would you walk away from that? And I'm telling you, I don't know if you've read that book, Aaron, but it grabbed a hold of me, and it was part of a number of books that I was looking into and reading. It led me down a pathway that is, I said, kind of deconstructing my ecclesiology. I can honestly say right now, I have zero interest as a pastor in growing a megachurch.
Right.
Zero.
Right.
Want to do it, don't want to do it, have no interest in it. My thinking's changed so much. I think by and large, the American mega church is not healthy.
Right.
By and large.
Right.
Good people in them.
Sure.
Good pastors preaching the word. People getting saved. But as a whole, the system itself is unhealthy and set up for the enemy to work in a lot of ways that's unhealthy.
Absolutely. Let me shift gears a minute. Speaking of reading, I'm a part of a group with you that you started that encourages the reading of American history and things of American history. What is this love affair that you have with all things American history?
You make me feel bad now, because I've really slacked off on my American history reading this year.
So have I, but I'm just asking. I didn't start the group.
No, man. I've always loved American history, even since a kid. I think my parents took me to Washington, D.C. in summer between my 7th and 8th grade year. And, even though I wasn't really reading American history then, just always been fascinated with it. As an adult, I got into watching a lot of the World War II movies that became popular. And then, the Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers. And I started reading Stephen Ambrose, his books on that stuff, and reading other.
Loved Ken Burns' stuff then.
So Nathaniel Philbrook, Mayflower was a good book. I can take a bunch of American history books over the past 20 years I've read and really enjoyed. I just really like it. Yeah, answer your question. I just like it.
Yeah.
It's intriguing to me. You learn from history.
Well, you got me to reading some things that I had to purposely go and pick out to read, because, well, I'm going to be a part of this group. I got to read something. So I read a book on the history of the Supreme Court. Fascinated me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's from how did it start? All of the justices throughout it to the current day that he wrote it. And it was just all of the history, the major things they had to deal with, and how they shaped the political fabric in which we live now. It was just cool to me.
So if you had to pick out one to three history books, American history books that are like must read, what would you choose?
I personally, it may be dry for some, but I think you need to read that one. I can't recall its name now. It's been a couple years. but I think that you need to read. I do think that you need to read that one. And I don't know. Just help me. What do you think are the?
I would read 1776 by David McCullough.
I've read that. Yeah, that's a good one.
Founding Brothers by Joseph Ellis. Those are the two I would hand somebody about the forming of our nation.
My wife has read the Adams letters and just is fascinated by that. The letters between John and Abigail. She's read that and she found that very, very interesting.
So I most of my reading goes from there. Then I've read a little bit on Civil War stuff, and then I would jump to the World War II era, and I've read several books in that time frame. Yeah, those are, and then I love the American West.
Yes,
I love. Yeah, you got an advantage where you live.
You're a Louis L'Amour fan, aren't you?
Well, I do like Louis L'Amour, but I'm a huge Elmer Kelton fan.
Is that the one you have the whole set of?
Well, there's no set to buy. You just got.
I mean, I thought you had a bunch of them.
Oh, I've read all his novels. Yeah, he's from Texas. He went to the University of Texas. He served in World War II in Europe. Met a bride over there. Brought her back to the States. Was a journalism major at University of Texas. Bless his heart, because I like the Aggies.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, what a big weekend they had.
Oh, man. Hey, just a little.
Yeah, you could throw Greg under the bus anywhere you want to in this moment.
I don't know where I came across this, but there's this website called My Team is Better Than Yours.
Oh my goodness.
And you go to it and you plug in any team, almost any team in college football. And then you put in the other team and it'll show you why your team is better than theirs. And so I took and put the Tennessee Vols in, because I'm a Tennessee Vols fan.
Right.
Is better than the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, which we know is not true.
No.
We know that's not true.
I'm sure it gave you 4 or 5 reasons why.
No, what it does, it just has an algorithm where the computer runs Tennessee.
Between these two teams, which is better?
No, it's when. So I mean, you could. I don't know if you have access to your computer to go to it, but I sent it to I have a friend used to be in my church, lives in Tampa now. And she is I'm telling you, Crimson Tide fan. In fact, she just mentioned me in her comments because I was teasing her. I went to her page and said, "Hey, you realize, don't you, that my team, the Tennessee Vols, is officially better than your team, the Crimson Tide? I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, LOL." And then I posted this screenshot from this website, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a Tennessee helmet.
Yep.
So it says, Tennessee beat Bowling Green. This is this year. Bowling Green beat Minnesota. Minnesota beat Purdue. Purdue beat Oregon State. Oregon State beat Hawaii. Hawaii beat Fresno State. Fresno State beat UCLA. UCLA beat LSU. LSU beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State beat Texas A&M. Texas A&M beat Alabama. And then it says at the bottom, therefore, Tennessee is better than Alabama.
That's like 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon moment right there.
Oh, it's funny you say that, because that's – I put that on here, and underneath it, I also put in the comments of my own post. I said, and I hate to be the bearer of more bad news, but even Florida State, who's not doing so hot this season, is better than Alabama. And I posted who they beat that beat Alabama this year. Of course, it all goes to Texas A&M, right?
Yeah.
They're
the only ones who beat them. So.
And I put, even as sweet as Lacey is, as you well know, she would have you know that her alma mater, although a NCAA Division II school, Carson Newman,
yes,
even they are better than Alabama, because they beat a team that 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 beat Texas A&M. So one of those teams. And then she wrote under there, but where does Kevin Bacon fit in all this?
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of teams beating other teams, Cardinals made a strong run but couldn't get it done in the playoffs this year. By the way, everybody, Brett is a huge Cardinals fan, has been his whole life. Cardinals fan. But man, what a great push to get there. But they just couldn't pull it off.
I had given up on them. I was so frustrated with them. They for that 17-game winning streak, was it?
Yeah.
Which is significant in baseball, as you know. uh, in any sport, but especially in baseball. You just don't win that many games in a row.
Mm-mm.
They found a way to win no matter what. Well, whereas up to that point in the season, it seems like they would blow leads and find ways to lose. It was so frustrating to watch as a Cardinals fan. We were just no way they're going to make the playoffs this year. They made it, but they ran out of gas.
Did you read Tony La Russa's biography of that of the World Series year?
I read a book called 3 Nights in August by Buzz Bissinger about
it was about La Russa.
That was in the late '90s when he was there.
But they had to make a strong run to get to. I thought that was an.
Oh yeah, no, that was different. That was late. That was the book I read was in the late '90s when they didn't go to the series.
This was about, I think, the 04.
Must have been about 2011.
Maybe so. Anyway, it was an interesting book.
2011 was similar to this season in that in 2011, which was the last time the Cardinals won the
They
World
were last place and they had to work their way up.
They had a less than 1% chance in August of making it to the playoffs, but they just started winning. They didn't win 17 in a row, but they
won enough.
Right on the very last day of the season, they made it into the playoffs as a wild card. Of course, they went on.
That's the book I read. It cataloged that year. It's a fascinating book.
Now this year
I'll look it up, send it to you.
I read October 1964 by David Halberstam, which is a classic book on the 1964 season between the World Series between the Yankees and the Cardinals. But the title was deceptive because you don't get to October until like 350 pages into the book.
Right.
It's really the whole season.
Yeah.
I don't know why he called it October 1964. I was thinking the book was going to be all about the whole series between the Yankees and the Cardinals.
You had to trudge through 350 pages to get there.
And granted, it was a really good book the whole way, but
sure,
mistitled. But we're way off topic now.
No, this is Dads with Coffee, Brett. This is what we do. This is just Dads with Coffee, man. We kind of go unscripted and we find our way through things. But we're 35 minutes in and we're doing well. So
I had one question I brought to this meeting.
Okay.
My question was going to be, and so I'm going to use it now.
Sure. I can always edit it out.
So, we haven't lived near each other for many, many years.
Right.
And with Facebook, like with so many people, that helped reconnect us in a lot of
Absolutely.
ways.
Yeah.
You were in West Texas and in Oklahoma. I was in Kentucky, Tennessee, and then Florida all these years. We always can just pick up where we left off. It doesn't feel like we're back in college or seminary together, but what is it that's changed in your life? What's a change that would surprise me? Something you like now that you didn't like, or something you don't like, or theology that's changed? Just however you want to answer that question. How is Aaron different at 51 than 21 or 24?
First, I'm working on my doctorate. You already have yours, but I'm working on mine. But I am wrestling. This is like the last 3 months. I was introduced to a book called The Making of Biblical Womanhood. And it's interesting. You and I may not agree at this point, which is fine. I mean, I'm wrestling with the current patriarchal perspectives that we have applied back to Paul. Are they as strict and subordinate as we have made them to be, or not? And I think that Barr, the author, she's a historian, and she makes a lot of solid claims. She's a Baptist. She's a youth minister's wife for dozens of years, and so she understands the issues, and yet she brings up an interesting thing that I'm thinking through, that maybe it's not as much. A second thing that may surprise you, but I think you might know this already. Back when we first met, I was deeply entrenched in all things traditionally Baptist. I am not as much of a traditionalist as I used to be. Now, call that age, call it parenting, call it years done. But I think that we as Baptists I read Mark Deaver's book the other day. I think we as Baptists have not given eldership a fair shake. I think we've reacted against other denominations, but we may not have given it as fair a shake as maybe we should, either by misinterpretation, misunderstanding, or fear. But I don't think you can get away from it biblically. And I think that until we address these issues, then we will suffer as a result of it, until we actually deal with it and address it, not from a power move, but just from a biblical understanding of it. And I think that we need to reevaluate some things.
Okay. It's good. So I guess I can answer my question for myself on that. I'm similar to you in that. Now, you may remember in college, I was already talking about elders.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is what we've had here for our history.
Sure.
And it's been good and healthy as a whole.
I have too. They just wanted to be called deacons.
Oh, yeah. So, but I think for me, I'm not rattled by what you just shared about the patriarchy issue.
Yeah.
I'm rather disappointed in many Southern Baptists when it comes to like the Beth Moore thing, with how much hatred and anger and vitriol.
There's way too much vitriol all over that thing,
and almost like canceling culture. You know, if you don't hold to a highly traditional view of women and what they can and can't do, then
I'm done with you.
You're not really Southern Baptist, or we can cancel you, or I don't. I don't. Here's where I'm at on. A woman can do anything except for be an elder in the church. That's my perspective.
Sure.
And I'm not going to break fellowship with another pastor or church if they do allow women elders.
Right. I think we have to be much more graceful than we've become the last 2 decades.
So the older I get, the number of issues that are significant to me is much smaller.
Yeah. And salvation. After salvation, let's give some grace.
Jesus Christ saves.
Yep.
God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. The Bible is the Word of God. And I'm not saying King James only on that. And I've got my King James Bible right here. Right. I love King James. Yeah. I've grown to love it. I used to not care for it much, but I decided I'd read it one year, some years ago. And I loved it and really enjoyed it. It's a great Bible. It's not necessarily the best or the only one, but why do we fight over? I mean, some stuff isn't just worth fighting over, and yet it seems to me that conservative evangelicals and Baptists included, we'll fight at the drop of a hat, and we'll act like it's the biggest thing in the world. And I'm done with that. I really don't care. I really don't care. It's amazing to me and tragic and sad to me that so many believers are more fired up and passionate about where you land on a controversial subject than they are passionate and brokenhearted that their next door neighbor's headed to hell. Agreed. I just don't have, at 51, I just don't have time for that anymore. I don't care anymore. If you're going to argue with me about, well, I don't like the lyric to that song and we sang it this morning. Well, so what? We'll work on it. We'll check that lyric out. Maybe we don't need to sing that song because of that. But you know what? So
is it worth fighting about? No.
Don't come to me upset and passionate about defending God's cause over that lyric when you've never crossed the street to meet your neighbor. Because according to the very Bible and truth you claim to be defending, it's far more important than you love your neighbors yourself than how you cross every T and dot every I in your personal theology.
I smile and laugh because I usually end up on the soapboxes these last several weeks. So it's good to have somebody else on the soapbox today. So I'm not the only one,
So yeah, going on a lighter note, what's changed for me? So I'm much broader minded than I was as a 20. I used to fight over that stuff. Not fight.
Yes, you did.
I'd argue with people over it.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So
we argued over things back in the day.
So what? You know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
It's the Lord's sanctification work. I'm not saying I've arrived by any stretch of the imagination, but He's been good to point out, that doesn't matter a whole lot. What matters?
We mellow as we age.
Hurting and need someone to love on him and pray for him. Mm-hmm. So, but another thing that's changed for me is I like soccer now.
Okay, I don't know you. That's because your kids played it.
No, they didn't. I only had one kid play, and that was that 5-year-old year before they could play baseball. And it was
you want them to have good footwork going into baseball.
Well, back then, I mean, it was a joke. It's where they all were around the soccer ball. They just moved on the field like that.
I know.
If there was a goal, it was an accident.
It was an amoeba.
I never could stand soccer. Never could stand it. Never had a place for it. And I'm sitting in the tire shop right down the road here, getting my tires changed or something. And there's a big screen TV in the lobby area, and there's a guy sitting to my right and a guy sitting to my left. And there's World Cup soccer. This is 2014.
Yeah.
There's World Cup soccer match on there, and they're getting into it, which really surprised me. 2 out of 3 of the men sitting in the lobby in suburban Jacksonville, Florida, are really into this game.
Right.
I mean, I have no idea what's even going on that screen.
Exactly.
I know nothing about this sport. So they were into it, making some comments about tactical comments and stuff. I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay. And I'm like, I started asking a few questions, and a really weird thing happened. I walked out of there and go, this is the world sport.
It is.
Period.
Yeah.
It's not like, people will argue whether or not LeBron or Michael Jordan are the greatest ever in basketball. People will argue over, if Tom Brady, they don't argue that anymore if Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback. But people argue over sports all the time. You cannot argue if soccer is the most important and most popular sport in the world.
Absolutely.
There's no one even in a close second place.
No,
not basketball, not American football, not golf, not lacrosse, not cricket. Globally, it's soccer, and then way down everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's provincial based upon where you are in the world. But soccer is the global sport.
It is.
So I'm like, how can the whole world love this sport and me think it's stupid and I don't understand it? It's ignorance.
It's arrogance of being a Western.
That too. American arrogance. Our sports are better. Boy, if they ever got an American football, they would leave soccer behind, type thing.
Right. It's like, no, I don't think so.
But I also started noticing how many kids were getting into it, and MLS was growing in popularity and all that. And so I just said, you know what? I am going to just try to learn about this sport because I love sports. I love keeping up with it. I might as well try to learn it. And so I started a little Facebook group with a few friends of mine from my hometown in Illinois, and I called it A Year of Loving Soccer.
Right.
A bunch of middle-aged men who don't like soccer, we're going to try to love it that year.
Right.
So we're going to talk about it. We're going to pick teams to follow.
Right.
Pick a team from the Premier League, because I quickly learned the best soccer in the world is in England when it comes to club soccer, soccer, the Premier League in England. So we all picked our teams. We picked a Premier League team. We picked an American MLS team that we're going to follow. We're going to watch these games. We're going to force ourselves to learn this sport and talk about it. And it was a complete dud. We talked about it for a week, and then for 51 weeks out of that,
nobody cared.
No one cared. No one would post about it. We did not love soccer for a year.
Yeah.
We all were kind of like, we don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. But I was determined. So I personally kind of stuck with forcing myself to watch it, bored out of my mind. Oh my goodness. How can you watch 60 minutes of action and the game 0-0?
Yeah. Oh,
and you say I enjoyed watching that.
Yeah.
Insane to me at the time.
Sure. Like Big Ten football.
About right.
How it used to be anyway.
So I just forced myself to keep at it. And I will say this. That was 7 years ago. I now officially like soccer.
Took 7 years though.
It took me 7 years of just staying at it, hit or miss here or there, but I'd keep, and I think the thing that hooked me more than anything was just the personalities and people talking about it, and me just checking the scores in the sport and hearing the news about it kind of around the sport that kept me interested. And so I started reading about it more. And now I actually like it. I actually watched a soccer match just a month ago. It ended 1-1, and I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching that thing. If you watch it long enough, it starts to click and make sense.
And that's the thing; it has to make sense.
Yeah, same with hockey.
Yeah.
Do you like either one of those sports?
Some.
Yeah.
I got into hockey because I worked with Dennis for 2 or 3 years at the Security Partners there in Fort Worth, and we'd watch hockey overnight. And so I kind of got into it, but it hasn't stuck with me.
Yeah.
But hey, let me final question, and we got to go. Final question. This is something I'm starting. You're my first one, so I'm going to start with you on all my interviews from now. I'm going to end with this. They're in Jacksonville or in that region. What is your favorite place to go eat? What do you order and why?
All right, that's a good question. You will probably know of this restaurant. It was started by 2 men in my neighborhood that I'm sitting in right now.
Oh, wow.
It's called Firehouse Subs.
Okay. That's your favorite place in all of Jacksonville?
Well, it's the one we go to the most.
Oh, okay.
You have Firehouse Subs there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all over the country now.
Yeah.
When we moved to Jacksonville 21 years ago, they were only in Northeast Florida. They had started expanding outside of the Jacksonville area. They'd started one in Gainesville. And so soon after we got here, in fact, my office is right down, our church and our office is right down the street from the corporate headquarters and the original Firehouse Subs.
Wow.
Store number 1. And sometimes when I have friends from out of state come, I'll take them to Firehouse Store number 1.
What do you order?
Isn't the original location. It's in a shopping strip a quarter of a mile down from the previous one, but they got more space in this other one, so they went into that. But I get the hook and ladder is good, and then the Italian one. I don't remember if it's got a name or not. But it's funny. We ate there the other night, and I've actually switched to where I'm starting to get the kids' meal.
Okay.
Because my metabolism is slowing down.
Oh, I know it.
It's amazing to me how I leave. I love that food so much. When I get the medium and I get the drink and I get the chips,
then you feel gross later.
I'm walking out of there going, ugh, too much.
Why did I do that to myself?
10 years ago, that wasn't a problem.
I know.
The kids' meal is still a decent sized sandwich.
Right. You just have to get over the pride factor of ordering a kid's meal.
Get over the what?
The pride factor. I'm an adult man ordering the kids' meal.
I got 4 teenagers, so it helps the wallet too that I'm not spending.
Well, you and I are only 4 years away from the senior meal, so there's that.
There's that too. So yeah, but we love Firehouse Subs. We're proud of it. What about where you're at now? You're kind of in a new location. You've been there how long now?
3 years. 3 years.
You're right below where you lived in seminary. So, but
it is. I am
restaurants.
When Dulcie and I got married and lived over on Cairn Circle, we're not. I mean, we're right there. Crowley's just right there. It borders on the south side. So, probably. Oh gosh, there's a lot of good food here. I struggle with what is my favorite, but if I get to pick where we're going to eat, if I'm going to eat fancy, I'm going to eat Riata's. It's a Mexican joint downtown Fort Worth. It's money, so it's only like anniversary. But otherwise, if I'm gonna pick, gosh, I like the burger shops. I would say Fred's in downtown. That's where I'd go to eat. We don't go often, but I'd go there to eat. It's called Fred's. It's a burger place.
I've never had In-N-Out.
Okay, I have to shut this off.
Well, hold on a minute.
No, I'm teasing you. How do you not have In-N-Out?
I want to try. It wasn't in Texas when we were there.
That's true. It is now.
And when I went to California, last time I went was the year 2000. I didn't even know of it then.
Exactly.
But,
it's okay. My wife loves it. It's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
there's better places. I mean,
next time I come to Texas, that's where I'm going to beeline to, is In-N-Out, because I've heard about it so much.
it's down on Hewlin.
On it.
It's by the mall.
We had a book in our public library here on In-N-Out, and so I read it, and I'm like, wow, what a great company, and it was a cool book to read about the history.
Yeah.
But I'll try that when I go there. But I'm like you. There's so many good restaurants in Jacksonville. I don't know how to pick a favorite.
Right.
You know, you probably want to hear a name that you've never heard of. That's just Jacksonville only.
That's
But
okay.
it's fine. We eat there the most. We love it, and it's nationally known now. So,
yes, it is. It is.
But,
Well, Brett, thanks for being with us today.
it's fun.
Appreciate it. We'll
I need to have you on my podcast.
We'll have to do it again sometime for sure. So, hey, you guys, thanks for being with us, and have a great week.